Council Carviallo.
Present.
Council Falco.
Present.
Council Knight.
Present.
Vice President Longo Kern.
Present.
Council Marks.
Present.
Council Scarpelli.
Present.
President Dolezal.
Present with 7 members present, none absent. Please rise to salute the flag. Aye. Before we get started tonight, we're going to read a report from last week's Committee of the Whole meeting. The purpose of the meeting was held. Wednesday night, May 18th. The purpose of the meeting was to review and discuss public safety. Present with the council and the Committee of the Whole was Brian Kerens, the acting director of Commissioner of Public Works, Frank Giliberti, the chief of the Medford Fire Department, Leo Sacco Jr., chief of the Medford Police Department, Roy Belson, superintendent of Medford Public Schools, Jennifer Woods, the chief of staff, Mayor Burke, Penny Funioli, the director of addiction services in the city of Medford, Lauren Felch, of the mayor's communication director for the city council, and 3 citizens: Erin DiBenedetto, a member of the Medford School Committee, Anna Fretz, citizen of Yale Street, and Harold McGilvery of the Medford Police Department. The meeting discussed various aspects of public safety and had 4 recommendations: that the police purchase a new speeding electronic sign, that a solar panel speed sign on Harvard Street be put back and fixed, and there be a similar sign on High Street, to keep a list of costs individually, and I think that was in relation to some of the ancillary fields in the realm of the Medford Public Schools, and also to receive a report. And I think that report was already given to us. It was handed to us, even though there was insistence to ask for it. It was in a packet that was given to us. And $93,500 to be explained that may have been added to the school budget in some manner that we're not aware of. So the chair now recognizes that was our committee report, and it was reported out favorably. We now recognize Councilor Carviallo.
Mr. President, if we could have a moment of silence for for Ron Tarantino, who was killed this week. For his father was a Medford policeman. So if we could, before we start the meeting.
Please, if you would all rise in a moment of silence for Ron Tarantino Jr., Auburn police officer who was murdered in the line of duty, son of retired police officer of Medford, Ron Tarantino.
Mr. President, just if I could on that.
Yes, Councilor.
Thank you, Mr. President. Officer Tarantino actually grew up on Alexander Ave here in South Medford, and went to the Kennedy School and also played youth baseball in the city of Medford. So Ron, in addition to his father being with the Medford Police Department for a number of years, also grew up in our community, and he was a great police officer, and he'll be sorely missed, Mr. President.
Thank you. And while we're on suspension, we'll take this matter of congratulations. It was offered under suspension by Councilor Carviallo. Be it resolved that the Medford City Council congratulate Bill Hager on his recent selection as Executive Director of the West Medford Community Center. Councilor Carviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was able to meet Mr. Hager this week. He seems like a nice gentleman. From what I understand, they had about 40 candidates out for the job, and Mr. Hager was selected out of 40, and that was done through a grant that was helped by our local state delegation, who helped secure the grant to finance the position. So I will be meeting with Mr. Hager this week, and maybe we'll invite him to a meeting to introduce himself. So.
Thank you very much, Councilor. So on the motion of Councilor Carviallo to return to the regular order of business.
Before you do that, I think a resident wants to speak. Wanted to speak on Committee of the Whole report?
If you don't mind, I'm not sure of the protocol.
Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Anne Marie Fretz, 215 Harvard Street, overlooking Yale Street. I took copious notes at the meeting and sent them to all the city councilors, to the chief of staff, the mayor, and to her executive assistant. So if anyone wants to take a look at those notes from the committee of the whole meeting, also known as the Public Safety Summit, they're available through those sources or any one of the city councilors. It's about 8 pages of notes, and that's how I operate, just so I can track things. This meeting was brought about by 3 years of efforts by Councilor Marks and a lot of issues that have come up during the years. I think you had said, Councilor Cohen, that it had been 4 years since there had been such a meeting, focused mostly on the Haynes Square area. And I just would like to recap and give you an executive summary of what I got out of the meeting, which may be different from what a councilor might hear. And basically, we are looking at the chief asking for 6 patrol cars in this budget cycle, 6 unmarked cars, 4 civilian administrators to fill in for the crime stats and crime scene analyst, as well as an IT specialist that are taking up the time of officers that are on the staff. Those officers could be out doing patrols. He'd like to have 10 civilian dispatch officers, which would free up those officers as well, but it would be a shared fire department and police department dispatch service. Currently, my estimations after looking at the 1990 numbers, which fell into the former city ordinance, that said we needed approximately 130 to run the city, which is the chief verified. We need about 28 more officers to bring the staff to those levels. At this point, we have 2 officers that will be retiring this year before the end of January 2017. 10 more officers in waiting who have reached the age of 55 and have reached 30 years of service. In speaking with other lieutenants this week, I find that by 2019 we'll be down by 30 officers reaching those ages as well. And some may retire early, and some may be leaving, some may be doing other things. The current senior staff to senior officers to patrolmen ratio is right now 1 to 3. We have 3 captains, 9 lieutenants, 16 sergeants out of 104 officers, which brings 76 patrolmen, 12 of whom are in administrative roles. So when we call for enforcement of parking on sidewalk, which is my bailiwick, we are taking them away from possibly looking at an assault, like there was this past Sunday at Dunkin' Donuts, or perhaps they're having lunch or dealing with a prisoner within the building. It's not to say, as one of the lieutenants stated, don't call, but there's some serious stuff being taken care of with a very thin staff, as stated by the chief himself. We need 2 speed radar sleds to accommodate traps or just traffic control in our area. They're $15,000 a piece. We need to replace the 2 solar-powered speed traps, one on Brooks School and one on Harvard Street, which I believe Councilor Della Russo just mentioned. We have absolutely no control on Harvard Street. We had a truck last week jump the curb and drive across our sidewalk, hit another curb, graze a tree, and just run along the sidewalk where I walk with my dog. And that scared me. I was watching it from a car. And this is a common occurrence these days. The police themselves would like the basic infrastructure, the communications, IT, and all the systems that operate, that they call in on, that they communicate with each other in different buildings. They would like that upgraded, and it's a serious issue. I believe this issue came up when Captain Doherty had to reconstruct a system, which is how all of his overtime that became a political issue last year evolved. With regards to the Medford High School, I went there Saturday to take a look at accessing the swimming pool because my children used to swim there on swim teams and on high school teams when they were competing. And I could not get into the parking lot because the 2 lanes of traffic were streaming out the entrance and the exit. There was no one directing traffic, so the cars were just streaming out 2 at a time. There should have been an ingress, there wasn't. The other exit or entrance was being used. There was no way to compound it or to confront it or deal with it, and there was no one directing it. I went around the backside and to the rear entrance where a caution tape is stretched across the parking lot in the back, where it cliffs up. And there were about 50 people that appeared to be part of the language school. I didn't see anyone in that area patrolling that area. It took me, again, 20 minutes to get back to the pool, and all the doors were open. I could have walked in and just walked around the area. And what Superintendent Belson said was that the chief should beef up his staff and put in patrols rather than have someone assigned or on the payroll of the school department to monitor 600 or 700 people at that facility on a Saturday or Sunday. I can't imagine what it would be like when it's out-of-towners going in there, which people don't understand the capabilities of just a bunch of people who are not obeying rules as far as driving and parking. The news is good in that the police department, while stretched thin, has made significant and important arrests with solid jail time being given out to the criminals. The West Medford breaking and entering thieves were arrested in another city, so that's going to be followed. The MPD right now, Medford Public Police Department, is currently staffed at 104 officers total. That includes all senior officers. They need at least 15 officers to adequately service Medford. They have difficulty reaching that number. We also have $8 million in free cash that could be devoted to go out and hire other officers who have either left their company that they're working for, left their city, relocated from another part of the country. There are many people out there, or people coming from the MPs, from the Army. It will take them 6 months through training, but if someone's already a licensed police officer qualified in the state of Massachusetts, they could readily be hired here. And again, I just want to thank the police department for doing everything they've done. They're stretched very thin. They're trying as hard as they can, and I think that what they're going to try to do is when people call in to ask for assistance, give them a real-time frame in which they are expected to be responding based on the cars that are out on patrol or responding to assaults and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you. On the motion of Council Caviello to return to the regular order of business, all those...
Thank you, President Del Russo. I just want to thank Ms. Fretz for being in attendance for this Public Safety Summit, which was held last Wednesday. One thing I wish they had done, and I think we had requested it, is that a reverse 911 call be sent out. I think that's probably what the meeting deserved. I know Council Marks, with the support of the rest of the council, had pushed for a public safety summit for months, if not years, to take place. And I think it was very difficult, and I thank the President for getting all the players in the room, but to get the Chief of Police, the Chief of Fire, Superintendent, and almost the whole council in the room, plus the Chief of Staff and somebody from the Mayor's office, which I believe was the council liaison. It took a lot, and it was a we discussed many issues. It was 2.5 hours, and there really was, I think, 1 or 2 residents, which was a shame because I don't believe it was publicly advertised. So that's my first comment. I think we got a lot of information. I think we did realize how understaffed our police department is and the fear of what's going to happen when we do get retired. You know, the retiree rate in the next couple of years is going to bring our levels even lower. So I hope that the mayor does what she needs to do with regards to hiring accordingly, because it does, as the chief said, it takes almost a year to get the officers trained and ready to go out on the road. with regards to the committee of the whole report, it's very vague in our request. So one of the big things, because I think it was mentioned by a couple counselors, that one of the biggest things we get complaints about is the speeding and the traffic. And it's really important, I think, that the electronic sign that we have has been broken for God knows how long. I think I got wind of it a few months ago, and it's still broken. So we did ask the chief of police for cost estimates and to purchase at least one electronic speeding sign. We can't have our office, every time we get a complaint about speeding, we can't, set up stings every day in every area. So the speeding signs do help a great deal. So if we could get, the chief of police could let us know how much those cost, and I believe he said it was about $15,000, and we did request that we purchase one. Also, the fixed street signs with the speed, I know they're on Elm and I believe 3 other locations. A couple of them are broken. I think Harvard needs to be fixed, High Street needs to be fixed. And we also asked for a cost. I don't know if we could get this if we could maybe put this on the floor tonight. We did ask for a cost of those signs to possibly put them up in other locations. I know the one on Elm definitely curbs speeding, as I drive that every day, and as you see people approaching, I think it just brings realization of the speed somebody's going, and it does slow cars down, and that's very important on where it is placed on Elm due to the Wrights Pond opening up very soon. I was concerned with regards to the school aspect of the conversation and the lack of security after hours. I know we're secure during the day. We have a Medford police officer there, as well as Officer Mazeka. But after school hours and on the weekends, when we do have the public in and out of the building, there's no security. I think it was mentioned that the parents are, a good way for security. Parents that are at events, as well as the custodians, and I just don't feel that that's adequate enough to secure our building, especially with the potential leasing of Edgerly Fields. We are going to have a lot of out-of-towners, a lot of leasing at that field, and our schools will be opened. I know whether or not they're, some of the doors are locked. We are going to have potential liability issues there, and security is extremely important. I think that's something that needs to be looked into further. But all in all, I think it was a great meeting, and I'm glad we had so many department heads in attendance, and we were able to get our questions answered. I know I could go on, and as Ann mentioned, I think 8 pages of notes with 115 questions that were asked. It definitely did help, and hopefully we can get the information out to the public, because I know a number of people were interested in it, and it's too bad we didn't advertise it. It wasn't advertised more. It would have been nice if they did the reverse 911 call.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. If you would just pause with me for a moment, I'm trying to make an adjustment to the queue system. Now it's working. Thank you, Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President, and I want to thank Ann Fretz for her thorough minutes that she presented to the council based on a very lengthy and very important public safety summit that this council has called for the past several years. And I want to thank you, Mr. President, for finally organizing this because it is an important issue. This issue not only is for safety within the community, it's also to get a handle prior to the budget on what is needed to provide police protection in our community. And I think we heard loud and clear, at least I did, from Chief Sacco, that there are a number of things he'd like to accomplish. However, his budget has been level funded at the very best over the last several years. And things he'd like to accomplish, like possibly having a separate truck unit in the community to pull over 18-wheelers that are going through our community at great clips of speed. He would like to do this, but can't afford it because we don't have the manpower, and the current manpower aren't trained to pull over these 18-wheelers and check the weight and the equipment they're driving with, if they have chemicals on board, and also their logs and so forth. So that was one issue that the chief mentioned. He would like to have additional staff. It was also brought up at the meeting regarding the Mystic River and how many years ago you never really saw many people on the Mystic. On the upper Mystics you would, but the lower Mystics you never saw many people on. And now we have the Medford High School row team on the Mystic River. And one of the questions I brought up was regarding if we have, in case of emergency, a quick response to getting to anyone that's on the Mystic. And Chief Sacco said that really the police department's ill-equipped to handle an emergency on the Mystic, and the fire department does have a small boat that they would use, and largely we would depend on the state police, who happen to be on the other side of the locks, to come to an emergency on the Mystic River. And that was an issue of concern that was raised. One thing that Ann didn't mention is the fact that this council, and we've even had, I know Councilor Scott Pelley had just recently, along with Councilor Caviello and myself, a committee of the whole meeting, a subcommittee meeting to discuss concerns with the bus stop in front of the Oasis and the need to create a truck area that would allow for deliveries, and also the corner of Harvard and Main, which has been a concern about trucks parking on the sidewalk. And to date, and this has been going on for quite some time, to date we have yet to address any of the concerns posed by the residents to keep trucks off of the corner of Harvard and Main. So that has also been a concern, Mr. President. The one thing I would like to mention is that, you know, every community is faced with priorities. And in this community, it's easy to say, well, we don't have the funding. Oh, we can't afford to do this. We can't afford to do that. But when you have $8 million sitting in what I refer to a free cash account, you can call it rainy day account, you can call it anything you'd like, but it's $8 million of taxpayer money sitting in an account that could be used for whatever the community considers a priority. And I think public safety has to be in the top 1 or 2 priorities for a community. And I'm getting tired of hearing, well, we don't have the manpower. Well, we'd like to go out and enforce that, but we don't have the manpower. Oh, we'd like to do speed radar, we don't have the manpower. And, you know, I think that story's getting a little old. When taxes go up every year and people are paying more and more on their taxes and you're getting less and less for city services, I think, you know, we have to know what the priorities are of the administration. And clearly, public safety has taken a back seat in this community. So I'm happy that the meeting was called for, the Public Safety Summit. I do, like Councilor Longo-Kern, wish that there were more ways to notifying residents by putting it up on the city website, reverse 911, putting it on maybe the government channel and the education channel to get the word out. But there was very little done to promote this particular very important meeting about public safety. The other issue that was brought up is the fact that we have to have better communications with the police department. And that is on behalf of the residents that I've spoken with. Would like to see an increased presence in the neighborhoods and would like to see community policing brought back. And that was one thing we mentioned to Chief Sacco, and he said, well, there's a lot of different aspects of community policing, and we're currently doing some of them. But my vision of community policing is when an officer rides by on a bicycle in a neighborhood, or an officer is down in the square checking doors in businesses after hours to make sure that they're locked, or to make sure that you know, the parks are safe, to make sure that there is a presence in the community and not just a drive-by. As I told you, Mr. President, when I took a bike ride a couple of weeks ago, it's amazing what you can see in this community when you're not just doing a drive-by. And when you happen to take the time, either walk or on a bicycle, and you can see things at a very different perspective than you can when you're driving by. And I think that's what residents are feeling right now. They may see the occasional police car drive by, but they're not seeing the presence that they come to expect in this community. And, you know, I just can't buy the fact that our manning is so low that we can't perform these basic tasks and basic city services. We took a large majority of, in my opinion, the workload from the police department, which was to issue tickets. And we said, you know what, we want to free you up from that issuing tickets, and that's not your job. Your job is to go out there, to be part of the community, and to prevent crime in our community. And I think I'd like to see more in that way. And I'm hoping that in this budget, that whatever recommendations the chief made, unlike prior years, that the administration take a long look at each department head's wish list to make sure that it's not just a wish, but it's something that actually comes to fruition. And, you know, I hate to see the chief go through the motions of creating a wish list and nothing ever happened. And that's been the case over the last several years, not with just the police, with every single department in this community. So I want to thank Ann Fretz again for giving us that in-depth minutes, and I want to thank the council president for calling for this meeting, and I hope this is one of just many meetings throughout the course of the year, Mr. President, so we can stay in tune with public safety.
Thank you very much, Councilor Marks. On the motion of Councilor Marks that the paper be received and placed on file, all those in favor? All those opposed? Carries. On the request of Councilor Caviello to return to the regular order of business, all those in favor? All those opposed? The regular order of business motions, orders, and resolutions. 16-507 offered by Councilor Marks. Be it resolved that crime-related and pedestrian safety issues be discussed. Councilor Marks, this sounds redundant at this point.
Thank you, Mr. President. No, public safety is not redundant. It's important. And let me just state, Mr. President, I don't know if you read my article about 4 or 5 weeks ago in the paper, but I asked residents if they thought their neighborhood was safe, and to respond back on several questions that I asked. And I was pleased to say that I received dozens of emails from residents who gave quite lengthy explanations on why or why not they thought their neighborhood was safe, in ways that they believe Medford could improve on public safety in the community. So I told residents that took the time to reach out to me that I would put this on the council agenda, and I would go through each and every email and make a list of concerns that residents had in our community. And as I stated a couple of weeks ago during an issue that we were talking about public safety, I was quite surprised because I thought the article that I wrote was going to elicit responses of people feeling unsafe in their neighborhood, people feeling that there are an abundance of crime-related issues going on in this community, and exactly it was the total reverse. And I'd say probably roughly 90 to 95% of the responses I received were not towards crime-related issues, but towards pedestrian safety issues. And for the most part, people in this community felt very unsafe traversing on city sidewalks and on city streets in this community. And I'd just like to go through a few, Mr. President. I won't be lengthy, but I think this merits, because I'm not aware of many polls the city sends out to find out what's going on in the community and ways of improving the community, although there's been a lot of transition teams set up, but I haven't seen any responses really back from these transition teams or anything really done with these transition recommendations. But I'd like to go through a few, Mr. President, because residents mentioned to me that speeding traffic interferes with their ability to enjoy our neighborhoods. And traffic calming approaches, which is something that I've spoken about for the last several years, is a way of redesigning streets to slow down traffic, resulting in safer streets, returning the streets back to our neighborhoods. And there were a number of residents that really took the time to explain what they thought a safe neighborhood was all about in regards to pedestrian safety. And many of the issues that were mentioned to me via email, and I did have a few phone calls because I gave that option also, but mostly emails, people offered suggestions. And I know one was, why don't we have more of the raised crosswalks throughout the community? And that's been something I know this council and I've personally worked on. And raised crosswalks do have a traffic calming way to them. They reduce the pedestrian crossing distance. They improve visibility, and they also slow down speeding cars. And that was one thing that was mentioned. Why don't we have more? And I'm not quite sure why we don't have more, to be honest with you, in this community. Not just on major roads, but throughout our neighborhoods that are experiencing speeding. There was also talk about curb extensions. And curb extensions are just a way of making it quicker for a pedestrian to cross the street. It also narrows the pathway down for cars, and drivers will inherently slow down because it's a narrower path. And many of these approaches are done by surrounding communities. As I mentioned many times, we don't have to recreate the wheel. If you go on the City of Cambridge website, they'll walk you through step 1, step 2, step 3. They've paid hundreds of thousands of dollars, thousands of hours to put together reporting on safe streets and ways to improve pedestrian safety. And we don't need to recreate the wheel. We can actually go in and steal some of their ideas. You know, I think that would go a long way to improving some of the concerns that residents raised. There was also a lot of concern about, which this council has discussed ad nauseum, about vehicles parking on sidewalks, safe routes to school. I know there was something developed, I know we have two former school committee people, there was something developed by the school department, but residents were looking for something that was more widely known in the community and better routes to involve the entire community. There was also talk about the broken sidewalks, which I'm hoping this council will address very shortly with a bond appropriation. Crossing lights that are broken throughout the community. Crosswalks not clearly marked. We're almost in June, so think about it. We're almost 6 months, almost a half a year into the year, and our crosswalks still are not painted. Or I should say a majority of them are still not painted. They also mentioned about poor lighting in many parts of the community, in particular some of the business districts at night. I know the hillside area was mentioned on several emails about poor lighting, and even in Medford Square, although there's been some improvement to the lighting in Medford Square. They've talked about signage faded or misdirected, so they'll have a sign that tells you no left turn, but you could take a left turn there, or they'll have a sign that's too far back, a stop sign, so you don't know if you have to stop or not. So these are the things that are being brought up. And we heard from Chief Sacco, Mr. President, the other day, and I find this very interesting because I called for this years ago. The Traffic Commission does yeoman's work. And you have the Chief of Police who runs a very, very busy department. He's involved with internal investigations. He's involved with community outreach. He's involved with running a large, very important 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week department. And to have him the head of the traffic division, Traffic Commission, to me does that position an injustice. Not that the chief is not a very worthy person to sit on that, but that really should be someone that can dedicate a good majority of their time to move these issues forward, to go out and do the research. I mean, the Traffic Commission just doesn't sit back and listen. They have to go out in the street, do the research, and a lot of the committee members do yeoman's work, but I really believe that that Traffic Commission needs to be looked at in the way it's defined, and possibly maybe have the chief as an ex officio member and not as the chairman of it, because even in his own opinion, he said that's a lot of work, a lot of time, and it's very time-consuming to do the right job. It's extremely time-consuming. So, and then potholes, and other issues were mentioned about safety. The crime-related side of it was a lot less, as I mentioned. People thought there should be better communication between the police and the community as a whole. Residents were concerned that there's not enough available crime statistics reported, and I know Councilor Falco brought this up about possibly having crime statistics citywide and by neighborhood. And right now that doesn't exist, or if it does exist, it's not adequate enough to give people enough information on what's actually happening in the community. So that was a big concern of residents. Residents would also like to see neighborhood crime watch groups throughout the entire city that would communicate. They also mentioned about community policing and would like to see a larger police presence within the neighborhoods. They mentioned about late-night solicitors. We do have a no-knock ordinance in the community. It covers everyone except for religious and political groups, I believe. We can't put any type of regulation on religious and political groups. But I can tell you firsthand, living in the Wellington area, right around dinner time, you can almost expect your door's going to ring with someone at your door. And it seems to be, in my opinion, the cable wars. One night I'll have Comcast, the next night Verizon's there. It goes back and forth. It's crazy how they do it. That I believe needs to be taken seriously also. And also at the monthly community policing meeting that they mentioned, there needs to be a better exchange of info. Residents said that, who attend this meeting, said it appears to be just a venting. So people go in and vent and never receive any feedback from the police department on ways to improve public safety in this community, helpful tips on improving policing, or how to prevent you from being a victim of robbery or assault or anything else, home burglary. And they would like to see more communication rather than just a venting session. So those are the things that were brought up, Mr. President. I appreciate you allowing me to have the time, but this is a very important subject. And, you know, we may all feel safe in the community now, but, you know, safety could be like the wind. And it's important that we stay on top of this. It's important that we provide the financial backing to allow our police department to have the latest and greatest equipment, and also the latest and greatest facility, which we currently know is inadequate right now and needs to be replaced. So I appreciate it again, Mr. President, and I thank all those residents who reached out to me and took the time to explain what was going on in their neighborhood. And I'm hoping some of this will carry through to budget. I know it will with me, and some of my recommendations will be based on what feedback I received from residents. So thank you, Mr. President.
Good evening, welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Jean Martin, 10 Cumming Street. And this is a very, very sober topic, and we should discuss it, and we should discuss it a lot. But we also should have action on it. And I would definitely expect that the mayor turns this into a priority. Whether it's the police building itself, whether it's to tear down the old one and put up a new one, whether it's to put a second floor, a third floor on the existing structure, whatever it takes that's acceptable to the police department themselves. The morale of the police department in this city's got to be terrible. I know I get mixed reviews. I'm sure they love and hate me at different times, and that's fine. They're allowed to do that. But we don't have enough police officers. And a few factors is that, first of all, we pay them through details. And that structure, we're not paying them what they're worth. And number two, we get a kickback from that. So we don't want to give up the details because the city gets a 15% kickback on every hour that an officer works. That system is archaic and it needs to go. We need to free them up for training. And when I mean training, I mean they need to be doing exercises on sweeping buildings, which also brings us into the school department issues, because there's no building that's better to sweep than the high school. But if the high school is being sold on the weekends to private entities, then we can't use it for exercises for the cops to sweep a building or to practice for an emergency situation, whether it's the fire department or the police department. This has to become an absolute priority for this new mayor. and I'm going to expect that. There's nothing more important than the police department. And like I said, and the other factor is, a lot of police officers, I'm doing Memorial Day at the Oak Grove Cemetery, and I'm focusing on police officers that were veterans who became police officers, and police officers who belong to the National Guard and Reserves who have died in action, whether overseas or on the street. I'm going to be focused on that this Memorial Day. And so we have police officers that might get pulled away from their duties as a Medford police officer to go into the National Guard and Reserves. And so we need to also have more officers available for that. And so if we're down to 104, then we don't have enough officers. And we need to have 130 recommended. This is a city that's huge. It's a very compact, small city. And if we don't do something about it, it will be too late. There is a point at which it becomes too late to do something, and a crisis will ensue. Then you will have an overreaction. But if you plan it out, then you can move forward. And also, practicing the traffic calming measures are absolutely essential for the police, because it'll cut down on the speeding. It will absolutely cut down on the speeding. And wait until the 490 units goes into Locust Street, and wait until Wegmans comes into Locust Street. Wait until Riverside Ave becomes, you know, absolute gridlock. Wait until all of this stuff happens. What are you going to do? You can't expect people to do more than what they're capable of doing. And while I criticize the police at times, I'm more their advocate than not. I don't see too many people up here over and over and over again. I'm grateful that that woman spoke today, Ann, because they need an advocate in the city. And I know that you guys say that you want the police building and you want police officers. Well, do something about it. Make your voices heard loud and clear that this is a priority in the city. And until, because you know, when they want money for parks, they find it, no offense. When they want money for certain things, they find it. But the city as a whole doesn't appreciate the police department. And they need to start, and they will when the crime goes up. When it affects them in their backyard, believe me, the citizens will be in here, and by then it'll be too late, because you'll have a lot of angry women, men and women in here, and they'll be saying, I want this and I want that. And where's the money going to come from then? They'll find it, but it's going to cost on some other level. Some other service in the city is going to have to pay for it. It's going to have to take the hit. And so thank you very much for listening.
Good evening. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Anne Marie Fretz, 215 Harvard Street. And one of the things I'd like to pick up on with the support of the police station is it's probably 7:30 right now, and they're eating their dinner at the desk office, and the spiders are coming down out of the ceiling. They just asked me to come back and take a look at them. If they're brown spiders, they're in big trouble down there. But that's the condition that they're living under, with the ceiling dripping and things like that. But what I really wanted to pick up on was what Councilor Marks was talking about with public safety, with the painting of the sidewalks, the painting of the crosswalks, the raised crosswalks, et cetera. And I believe Councilor Knight brought this up, Councilor Falco brought it up, and Councilor, Scarpelli brought it up. I'm sorry, starting to choke here. With the staffing currently in the Highway Division, there are 15 members on the staff with Steve. 7 of them were available to work this week, and it's an incredible burden for them to pick up on what is put in the C-Click fix, in addition to their regular duties of filling potholes, fixing roads, painting lines, posting signs, etc. They just don't have the manpower, and it dovetails into public safety, because if they're not fixing it, it's not getting done and it can't be enhanced. It doesn't keep our public safety enhanced. I actually wrote a letter of apology today to Brian Cairns, because I asked for, after 2 weeks of waiting for the blockades to be put on in front of the 4 house lots that are between my driveway at the Lincoln and Kennedy schools to the corner of Harvard and Main Street. Having had nothing done, I wrote and asked for the orange and white trash barrels or orange and white traffic signs to be distributed. The traffic department told me that the traffic commission has to put them out. It has to be approved. We've already been through that with the bollards. They've already been through that with pots. And the chief of police has said the mayor can decide at a moment's notice to put out whatever she wants to block things. We don't want to put signs because they're permanent and they would dig up what sidewalks still remain. But I did apologize to Brian because it would end up falling on him to put the barrels out. But this is how desperate we are for those 4 house lots to be blocked so that we're able to get from our driveway, not walking the full length of Harvard Street, but just those 4 lots to get to what is called an 85% walkability square. It's not. It's 0. It's not safe. I proved it last week with the ProTech guy just jumping the sidewalk. Never mind parking on the sidewalk or driving on it. Nothing has changed. We don't have the parking enforcement. They're off doing more critical details. You know, there's gas leaks all over the place. There's no one managing the traffic. If you go down Harvard Street and you see them doing a traffic repair where they've cut into a lane and a half of traffic, there isn't anyone available to run a detail for them. It's basically becoming chaos all over the city. We need more men on both DPW, but more important, on the police department. Thank you.
Good evening, welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Robert Penta. I live at 0 Summit Road, Medford, Mass. I'm a member of this August body. You know, this isn't the first time we're talking about police safety and security here within this community. I can remember, Councilor Della Russo, when you first came on, I think one of the priorities in this council was the police department and a public safety building. And we're here so many years later after the fact under a new administration. If you really want to have public safety be a real major concern, a major issue here within this council, you have a budget. I think it was you, Councilor Falco, who said early on that you would like the budget process to be informed a little bit early. It's something that we've all asked about. Councilor Marks, you just alluded to having a wish list for which we haven't seen. You are now coming into almost the end of May, and you have yet to have a budget presented before you. Surrounding cities and towns are already discussing it. If this council is really serious about public safety, they would hold the budget up, demand from the mayor not only a time schedule, but the financial wherewithal to put a new police department together and to hire more police officers. And I think once that takes place, this administration knows that this Medford City Council is serious. And you're not just talking about it. You're not just referring to it. You mean business this time. We just had a very tragedy this past week with Officer Tarantino. His father was a Medford police officer. This isn't a matter of whether Black lives matter, white lives matter. It's every life matters. And that's what people have to understand when they look at a police officer. They're there each and every single day, just like a fireman, in the public safety realm of this community, to take care of the people that they were, how can you say, that they were charged to do. And they don't do it asking for any recompense or any notoriety. It's their job. Well, let's give them a break this time. Councilor Marks, you alluded to $8 million sitting in free cash. City of Malden, perfect example. They got $8 million, and they also got $8 million in grants toward a new police station. We haven't even delved into this matter. You folks haven't even been called into a roundtable meeting with this administration to talk about this, not only as a priority, but as a necessary demand to keep our city safe. If we don't have folks like Ian Fretz or Jeannie Martin coming up, and sometimes they may say, hey, they're a pain in the neck, and you might even think that I'm a pain in the neck, but you know something? I don't mind being the pain in the neck, because this is my community, and I love it. I served on this board for 36 years, and I have yet to see the Medford Police Department get what they really need, not only in more men and a new building, but a sense of priority here in this community. And when I compare that and I look and see the nonsense that's going on in the school department, praising the superintendent for whatever he's doing, which can't even compare to what the Medford Police Department and the Medford Fire Department does on a daily basis, protecting this community and every single one of us in this room, that to me should be the priority. And if you really want to be strong about it, you would hold this mayor, Mayor Stephanie Burke, hold her feet to the ground and do not move on that budget until you get your answer for more policemen and a new police department. Be happy to answer any questions if anybody has them. Thank you.
Chair awaits a motion.
Chair awaits a motion. On the motion of Councilor Caviello to receive and place on file, there is a Mr. Citizen wishes to come and speak. Good evening, sir. Please state your name and address for the record. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. President. My name is Dr. John Storella, And I just want to make a comment about holding up the budget. It will never happen. Our charter does not allow it. Our charter arranges for a majority of the city council to be programmed, and I say programmed, to pass the budget. It will be passed at the last possible moment. That's my prediction.
On the motion of Council Cavill to receive and place on file, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. 16-508, offered by Vice President Lungo-Kern. Be it resolved that the administration provide the City Council with information on why $100,000 was taken from the city side to cover the deficit in the Edgerly Field account. Be it further resolved that the City Council be informed as to which account the $100,000 came from. Madam Vice President, do we know that to be true?
Yes, we do. The superintendent wrote it to us, and he gave it to us in the packet on Wednesday night. I think we all received it. States City Hall has recently made a transfer of $100,000 to assist in meeting the fiscal year 15 debt payment by supplementing the fund. And because we made that transfer, Edgerly Field closes fiscal year 15 with a positive balance. So yes, we were informed on Wednesday. We just weren't informed with regards to where on the city side this money has come from and why we've transferred it from the city side to the school side when the school side operates with over $50 million, with a over $50 million budget. I'd like to further amend it because the packet that we did get on Wednesday is kind of thick, is a lot of reading. It also mentions $97,800 is paid from the city side to LeConte Rink. So if we could also get an update on why we're taking another almost $100,000 from the city side to LeConte Rink. There may be a very good explanation for it. I'd just like to know where it's coming from, why it's being paid to these accounts that operate under community schools, which obviously operates under.
So, just one moment, Counselor, just a clarification. In the absence of the clerk, just if we all could be clear about what our amendments are. So you're asking, so I can have some clarity to assist Mrs. Dunahee. We are asking for an amendment to have an explanation on why $97,000 was taken to settle out LeConte Rink.
I'm not sure if it's to settle out or if it's just a payment. Maybe somebody on the council can explain that. It's just the last 2 years we were only given the last 2 years for LeConte. So reviewing that, it looks like there's $97,800 that comes from the city of Medford, and like to LeConte Rink.
Point of information, Councilor Scarpelli.
I believe that the rink is under the city, still in the city side, but is run by, scheduled by the athletic director. That's the only difference. So we can ask if that money needs to go within the system, but I believe it's in the city's budget, but it's scheduled through the athletic director, so it's not a school. I believe that's what we talked about.
Oh, yeah, so, right, the athletic director oversees all aspects. And it just, I mean, the money, I'm assuming either it's separate or it's coming through community schools, so whether that's city or school, I agree, I understand.
Point of information, Councilor Scarpelli.
From what I gathered, community schools doesn't receive any monies. All they do is schedule. All they do is schedule. The money in the financial part is through the city. It's a city account.
Thank you, Councilor.
Okay, so my question still remains, why is there city money going to the LeConte Rink, 97.8? I'm asking simply asking the question. We have the rink, we have the fields, we have community schools, and we have the pool, 4 functioning facilities that are, supposed to generate money. I believe when we went out to bond for Edgerly Field in 2011, we were told this was going to be a self-sustaining endeavor. It's about $255,000 in interest, $155,000 a year in principal, and we were told that that was going to be generated through revenues every year. And each year it seems like we're coming up short, and this last year for the field looks like we're shorter than ever at the 93,000, I'm sorry. So to be transferring money and blatantly, I mean, I think actually this was by Pat Valley, who is the Director of Administration and Finance for the schools. So I think we need to know this before budget time. And if there are, and if I could also further amend it, are there any other, that's the only two portions of money that are coming out of the general fund for the city. I believe, I would assume the general fund, but we're in the general fund, coming out of the city and going towards these 4 independent pieces of property, revenue generating property within the city. We need to know if there's any other money that's also coming out from the city side to support any of these 4 facilities.
On the motion of Vice President Longo-Kern, as amended by Vice President Longo-Kern, Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, I think a rather important question that we should be asking is why the school department is paying down this bond. I think if we take a look at all the other bonded debt that we have in the city, whether it be the science labs, the school pool, you know, the resurface, the rebuilding of our new schools, the debt was carried by the city side. And in this instance, and I can't think of any other instance that's occurring at this point in time or in the past, where the school budget would actually be required to use their operational funds to fund the bonded debt. So I think the real question is, why is the school department responsible for paying the bonded debt? Why is that not coming from the city side? Because as far as I can tell, and my research would indicate that this is the only instance where that's happened in the history of the city since, you know, the last 20 years. So I think that's really the question to ask, Mr. President, is why is the school department being required to pay down the bond at Edgeley Field based on operating expenses when every other bond in the community, including the new pool, including the building of the new schools, was covered through the city side?
Very good. So amended by Councilor Knight that the question be asked to whom?
I think the question would have to be asked to the auditor, the budget director, the office of
the office of the budget
of administration and finance in the schools, in contrast with that of our budget office here in the city, Mr. President. You know, why is this the best way to go about it in terms of paying down the debt? Why is the school department being saddled with this burden through their operational account? Because their ability to raise revenues is far more restricted than ours as the city government.
Yeah. Very good. Chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I happen to have been on the council when this came forward. And when originally the Field of Dreams was in its infancy, there was a cell tower, as we all remember, which was going to pay for the field and the upkeep of the field. And that fell through. And at the time, I recall the mayor, it was Mayor McGlynn at the time, stating that they're going to be able to get a fair amount of revenue from the Field of Dreams, Edgeley Field, and that was going to pay for the bond and the interest, as well as any maintenance cost. So I'm not sure where along the line people in this community had a lapse of memory, because the superintendent the other night was at a public safety meeting, and he indeed said the same thing. And he even put it in an email to a resident that was kind enough to take the notes for the meeting, and Mr. Belson corrected the resident. And if I could just read it, Mr. President, it says, the payment for the bonded indebtedness is always paid from the municipal account. For some unknown reason, the Edgeley Field bond was charged to the school account. Now, I don't know why the superintendent has a lapse of memory, but he was superintendent at the time, and when this issue was going on, it was known. This wasn't a secret how the bond was going to be paid for. It was going to be paid through the revenues generated through the field. And I even have a copy, if anyone would like to take a look at it, boston.com, July 28, 2010, and the article's entitled Field of Dreams Set for August Opening. And it says the city which footed the roughly $2 million bill for the fields expects to recoup much of the money it laid out by renting the facility during the fall, spring, and summer seasons. McGlynn said the rental fees will eventually help the city pay for the bond it took out to pay for the fields. So this is not, I think people are trying to say something's wrong here. The superintendent alluded to the fact that this has never happened before for some unknown reason. Maybe I missed something, but it wasn't unknown to me when I took the vote that this was going to be paid back by the revenues generated. Now, if the revenues aren't enough to pay for it, according to the Director of Administration and Finance, in her letter dated May 9, 2016, in the Facility Financial Activity Review, she quite emphatically states, operationally, the fund is able to cover expenses with revenue. However, the bond interest and principal payments are not sustainable by the fund, and as reflected, have eaten away at any balance created the first year of operation. Efforts are underway with City Hall to identify funding to redirect and structure the debt payments. So apparently, that's already happening because the city administration gave $93,000 to the school department. I didn't vote on it. I didn't hear about it until I read it in this report. So apparently there's money shifting back and forth. And so I'm not quite sure that the issue is whether or not the school side has to pick up the bond indebtedness. I think that's a given, in my opinion. The fact is that the fields may not be generating the revenue that was anticipated, and that's fine. And if we have to look to pay for this bond another way, then we need to come forward and say that, but not to come out and say for some unknown reason, because the superintendent's a smart man, and you know, I think there are other smart people in this community and other people with memories, and I have a good long memory of what took place. Edgerly Field in fiscal 2015 generated $210,480. FY16, it generated $172,982. So clearly, that is not enough to pay for the maintenance and the bond indebtedness. But, Mr. President, it's clearly the responsibility of the school side to pay for this. I have no reservation about that. And if the discussion needs to be had with the school department and the school committee, then they should have those discussions. But that's not trying to pull the wool over people's eyes and say that this was never a topic, it was never intended to be paid for by the school committee, by the school department, because that is quite emphatically untrue. And we all received a copy of the RFP, and I guess there was just another one voted on recently. But I found it quite amazing, Mr. President, that this entity that may put up the bubble structure on Edgerly Field for the winter months, the city's going to charge them $75,000 in rental for those months. And I find it quite amazing that if you do the math, and I did it on the back of a sheet with a pencil, so it's not exact, but if you look at the hours that are in the RFP and the days that are in the RFP that this outside entity has control of the facility, it comes out to roughly $62.25 an hour. So that's what the city of Medford's saying. Okay, you want to go back there and practically own our whole Edgerly Field? We're going to charge you $62.25. The amazing part about it, Mr. President, is that, and Councilor Scarpelli could probably speak better than I could on it, Medford Youth Soccer is currently paying, I believe it is $75 per hour for Edgerly Field. And under this RFP, and the way I understand it is the fees aren't cemented yet, so I guess they haven't really figured it out yet, but the RFP calls for rentals to groups affiliated with the city of Medford, and the Medford Public Schools would pay $145 per hour. So here we are, the residents bonded this, we all gave our money to put up $2 million to bond it, it's our Edgerly Field, we're going to take it, we're going to give it to an outside entity, and we're going to have that outside entity make money off our bond that the residents paid for by charging our students, our youth groups, double the price to rent the fields. It just doesn't make any sense, Mr. President. You know, if we want to get into the business of utilizing that field year-round and put our own bubble, we should have that discussion then. Let's talk about it. But to outsource it to an outside entity after the residents of this community are paying for the bond and then charging our own students and our own residents double the fee to use the field is a fleecing of the taxpayers of this community, Mr. President. There's no other way of stating it. And, you know, more needs to be done on this. I know the school committee is moving forward on this, but let me tell you, more needs to be done on this, more needs to be looked at, and the way I understand it is these prices don't even include the heating of the bubble.
Point of information, Council Scarpelli.
I believe it goes with everything, soup to nuts. It's with all the utilities and the staffing.
Well, that may be the case. I didn't see that. It's a rather large RFP. I didn't see that, but the fee is doubled. Unless it gets changed again, who knows? But I, as one member of this council, I'm not going to sit by after the residents are paying for this $2 million bond, giving it to an outside community, an outside entity to make money off our residents. That's what's happening. They're making money off our residents, and then in 10 years, according to the contract, we own the bubble. You know what the bubble's going to look like in 10 years from now? The bubble's going to be burst in 10 years from now. You know, it's not something we're going to want to inherit in 10 years from now. So, you know, we really need to take a closer look at this. I thank Councilor Longo-Kern. I hope we get answers on this immediately because this is taxpayer money that's being expended. And in the interest of our youth sports, in the interest of our sports at Medford High School, this needs a closer scrutiny before it gets approved, Mr. President.
Madam Vice President.
Thank you, Councilor Del Russo. If I could further amend the paper, in the first paragraph of the letter from Ms. Velli, it does mention that there is missing information in this packet with regards to personnel employed at the 4 listed venues. That information will be ready. It supposedly was ready on the 16th of May. If the council could get a copy of that, a listing of the personnel employed at the 4 below listed venues. I too agree. There's definitely concerns with the bubble. I think there's a lot of pros and a lot of cons. And I know the school committee is doing their due diligence, and I know they've gone through probably 3 or 4 copies of an RFP. But there are true concerns, and one of my concerns is, you know, just the availability to Medford residents. And I do understand it's the winter months, but when you see kids wanting to get on those fields and a bubble back there, and they see that it's occupied every hour on the weekends by outside organizations and almost all afternoon by other, you know, organizations, it's a tough swallow when we're the ones paying for this bond, and obviously the city side helping pay for that bond.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. So on the motion of Vice President Longo-Kern, as amended by Vice President Longo-Kern and Councilor Knight, just one moment, sir. Chair recognizes Councilor Caviello.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, would it be possible for all the council members to get a copy of the RFP?
Yes, it will. Would you like to make that as an amendment?
I would like a copy of the RFP so I can speak intelligently also.
Vice President Longo-Kern, as amended by Vice President Longo-Kern, Councilor Knight, and Councilor Caviello, that the City Council receive a copy of the RSVP. And
that's it. Again, you know, I have the same concerns. I said a few weeks ago. I hear the phone calls coming already. You know, and we've heard them from other things. My kid goes to the school there, and there's no room for us to play. So again, before the phone calls start coming, I like to see the RFP, Mr. President.
Thank you. That's the RFP. Request for proposals. Chair recognizes the citizen at the podium. Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Robert Penta, 0 Summit Road, Medford, Mass. I'm a member of this august body. And I'd just like to say, and I brought this up about 2 or 3 weeks ago, regarding the bubble. There's a bond council that wrote the bond proposal. If you think of this thing logically and you think it through, You're allowing a private, for-profit business to come in and take advantage of a city's bond at the city's interest rate, and for them to make a profit on city time, on city property. Well, if we're going to do that, are we opening up Pandora's box to the swimming pool? Are we opening up to the skating rink? Are we opening up to the new $14.5 million science labs that we have in the school? Anything that we've had a bond that can have an effect upon the people within this community, we are now saying, come on in, pay us for what you think you want to pay us, and we'll entertain it, if not accept it. You know, Council Marks made an interesting comment a few weeks ago when we had this discussion as it relates to it. If they're putting so much time into the bubble, I wish they would put more time into the educational process at the school. They put a lot of time into hiring 5,000 administrators at over $95,000 apiece. And as a matter of fact, one of them was one who was terminated from one school but hired back up at the high school at $95,000. A lot of interest, a lot of input went into that. But when we look at this, you have a legal question here. And I think this council voted, all 7 of you voted, to have a report back from the bond counsel. From the bond counsel who wrote this for the city of Medford. The legal question is, can the city of Medford rent or lease this piece of property to a private for-profit company and then charge back the city of Medford for its use of the same property that they have leased for a measly $75,000 a year? Because that's all they give in the city of Medford. And don't forget, if you're right, Council Marks, if it's a 10-year deal and the city gets the bond, it's not costing these people anything because they will write this off on a tax write-off for 10 years for its use, especially if it's for a for-profit business. And what are we going to get at the very end as a community? Whatever the repairs that are needing to take place are going to take place, and who's going to have to pay for it? The city. These are the type of questions that would be great ballot questions to put out there during a general election. Because if it's such a wonderful argument and a wonderful issue, the pros and cons of public hearings and meetings at city council and at school committee meetings would serve the purpose of whether the people want this or not. I think if I had a student up at the high school right now, I would be more concerned on the educational quality of where that student needs to go or would like to go, rather than arguing over a bubble that might have some not only logistical, legal questions, but would have questions over the fact that what are we doing? Taxpayers' money. When we as members of the Medford City Council voted for the science labs, for the skating rink, for the swimming pool in Edgerly Field, we were taking the taxpayers of Medford's money and the bond rating that we were getting at that particular time to purchase that piece of bond in behalf of the city of Medford. You're not doing that now, because what you're doing is you're abdicating the responsibility of the bond responsibility by the city, and you're allowing an outside for-profit business to come in here, take advantage of it, and pay the city a measly $75 an hour, $75,000 a year, while at the same time make thousands and hundreds and thousands of dollars over the life of the bubble. That's not good financing. That doesn't make good sense to me. And I think this needs a lot more attention to the fact that you need all your legal questions asked, and I think you really need to compare this with this upcoming budget in the school department. It makes a huge difference as it relates to where priorities are going. We just got through talking about public safety, policemen, we talked about a new police station. Well, you're talking now about a bubble. And before the bubble bursts on the city of Medford and you get stuck with a financial boondoggle, I think we need to say, let's slow down and let's really take a look and see what's going on, because that's what this is all about. It's your money, it's our money, it's the city's money, it's everybody's money. And if we're going to allow a private for-profit business to come in and take advantage of our community and our real estate to the detriment of our city, for a measly $75,000, then you're really selling yourself short, and you're selling the taxpayers short. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Vice President Longo-Kern.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. President. Just while we're on the topic of the 4 facilities, it's showing, if I'm reading it correctly, it's showing, might as well ask all my questions now rather than wait till we meet with the superintendent. It sounds like it looks like the community schools is in deficit for 2016 currently at $117,000, and then the pool is at a loss as well, deficit $41,000. So if we could get an update with regards to how those 2 facilities are going to be funded, because it does mention that there's a balance, that the community schools, in the front page, it says the community schools funds are going to balance out the pool budget, but I'm not sure how that's going to happen when the community schools is running at a $117,000 deficit. So if we could just ask that question.
On the motion of Vice President Longo-Kern, as amended by Vice President Longo-Kern, Councilors Knight and Caviello, and further amended by Vice President Longo-Kern, that the administration report back to the City Council as to how and why the pool and community school project budgets are in deficit, and how, in fact, it will be that they will balance themselves out. Is that correct, Madam Vice President?
Correct. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Vice President. Chair recognizes Councilor Marks.
Thank you, Mr. President. And just one other aspect of the very lengthy RFP, it also states that this outside entity will be responsible for any snow removal leading up to the site. And in the case they don't provide snow removal, the City of Medford will provide snow removal and then get reimbursed. So that's great. We're going to have our manpower getting off the streets and doing what they need to do, freeing up the schools and doing parking lots and everything else to go clean this for a men's soccer league that has nothing to do with the city. So there's a lot of things in here, Mr. President. If we start going through it line by line, I don't see how this is paying off for our community. Thank you.
Thank you. So on the motion as amended, all those in favor? All those opposed? The motion passes. 16-509, offered by Councilor Falco, whereas the City of Medford is made up of many different neighborhoods, whereas these neighborhoods are unique and have their own different concerns and issues, be it resolved that the Medford City Council request that beginning in September, the Medford Police Department hold their monthly community meetings in each sector of the city. Councilor Falco.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to begin by just saying that the public safety meeting that we had last week was very informative, very educational, and it's something that I agree we should have on a regular basis. I think it would help us all. But tonight's resolution is about working together to protect our neighborhoods. Once a month, down at the Medford Police Station, there's a monthly meeting where residents can come and talk about the different issues in their neighborhood. And it's a very informative meeting. I've been there before, have learned a lot, and it's always good to see what's going on in each of the different neighborhoods. But I believe the meetings could be more productive and engage more citizens if we could actually maybe take those meetings on the road and take them to each of the police department divides the city into 4 different sectors. It would be nice if we could actually have those meetings, in each sector of the city. So therefore, the residents can go to the meeting in their neighborhood and actually talk to the police officers that actually work that neighborhood, get to know them, they can get to know the issues, and everybody can work together to actually solve some of the city's problems with regard to crime. So I think they'd be very informative. I think there's a lot of benefits. We talked about crime data. If we actually got that person, if Chief Sacco actually got that person in the budget that was collecting crime data, I mean, you could go over that, in a neighborhood meeting and find out what's going on in your neighborhood. And I just think it's better for our neighborhoods. It helps educate everyone. We all keep an eye out for each other, and I just think it's a good way of bringing everybody together. The reason why I said let's start in September is because they don't meet in July and August, and the last meeting's in June. So I think September would be a good starting date. If you did September, October, November, and December, you could hit all sectors of the city, and that wouldn't limit to just, I want to be clear. It's not like if we had the meeting in Wellington that you just talk about Wellington issues. Anyone could go to talk about any issue, but it would be in that sector of the city, and, the residents, hopefully there'll be a lot of people from that sector there to talk about the issues that happen or occur in that neighborhood, but everyone is welcome. Everybody can talk about any issue that they want to. So I think this is, in my opinion, it's a good plan. I think it's something that we should do. I think it's something that's long overdue, and I think it would definitely bring the community together. So I'd like to move approval.
On the motion for approval by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Knight, an excellent measure, Counselor.
Thank you very much.
And I must say the idea of starting in September is beneficial in a number of ways, especially since it's a season of enthusiasm and rebirth in many ways.
I would agree. Everyone's back from summer vacation. They're well rested. They're ready to go. They're involved. They're engaged. And I think, you know, it would be nice to actually have the residents from each of the neighborhoods come to the meeting and be engaged in the process and what's going on, and we can all help each other out.
Thank you, Counselor.
Thank you.
Madam Citizen, if you would please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Jean Martin, 10 Cumming Street, and I agree with you that this is a wonderful idea. And I think it's great. Bring the show on the road and bring it to the neighborhoods, and you know, you'll get more participation, hopefully. Hopefully. Some neighborhoods you still won't get a response, trust me. But you can always try, and that's right. But my point is that we're asking for the police to come out again and do something for us. What are we going to do for the police? And I'm not pointing fingers at you. No. I'm saying, as a body, what are we doing for the police to motivate them? Because we keep asking for them to do, you know, patrols and community organizing and community policing and everything else. But like Mr. Pender said, if the place that you guys can show your voice is not to approve the budget unless there's more money for the police department. Mm-hmm. Whether it be for the police building, whether it be for more police officers, then that's when we can show that we're willing, even if it's 2 officers. It doesn't have to be 20 all at once. And things like cruises should be on a regular budget anyway. We should get 2 new cruises every year no matter what, because they're always on the road and they're always working. You know, what are we going to do? But cruises is small potatoes, because we really do need personnel and we need a new building. So what are we doing for them? Because again, we keep asking of them, but I don't see the hand going back to the other side. And I'm not pointing to you, because I think it's a great idea.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Absolutely, I think it's wonderful, but I just wanted to make that note.
You bring up a good point, and I think that, you know, the public safety meeting was, I think, very beneficial. I know to me, and I think everyone involved. It was nice to actually, you know, listen to the chief and just find out his wants and needs with regard to law enforcement. Mm-hmm. And you know, to me, that's very beneficial, because you know, he's there, and Officer McGilvery was there as well. I mean, he's in the trenches every day. He sees what's going on in the streets. He can actually tell you firsthand. The chief can too, what they need, what their wants are, their needs are. What would they like to see, you know, added to the police department with regard to personnel and whatnot. So it was very beneficial. I think with regard to the budget, we need to make some serious decisions there. I'm hoping that we get a budget soon, but public safety needs to be a top priority. And I think, you know, money definitely needs to be infused into the police department.
And I'm going to ask the public, what are we willing to sacrifice to have these new police officers? Because it's going to have to come out of some fund someplace, whether it's the bubble or the skate rink or a park. What are we willing to sacrifice to have this happen? Unfortunately, and there are certain things that shouldn't be questioned, like we need another teacher for English. I heard we had a shortage of that, so that shouldn't be on the docket. But there are other places where we can come up with funds for 2 officers for this year. It's not a big ask. I don't think it's a big ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, sir. Welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Dave Champy, 35 Greenhalgh Street. Councilor Falco, that's an excellent proposal. Undoable. Would you try to arrange the venues for these meetings?
I will absolutely take it on myself.
I've tried.
I will tell you right here tonight. I will take it on myself, and I will organize all 4 meetings.
Great.
Okay?
Best response we've got from the council in a long time.
Thank you.
Thank you. So on the motion for approval by Councilor Falco, seconded by Councilor Knight, all those in favor? Roll call vote has been requested. Madam Clerk, if you would please call the roll.
Council Carviallo.
Yes.
Council Falco.
Yes.
Council Knight.
Yes.
Vice President Longo Kern.
Yes.
Council Marks.
Yes.
Council Scarpelli.
Yes.
President Del Russo.
Yes, with a vote of 7 in the affirmative, none in the negative, the motion passes. 16-510, offered by Councilor Knight, be it resolved that the Medford City Council commend and congratulate John Jack Buckley for his many years of service to the City of Medford as a member of the Medford School Committee, Director of Public Works, Project Manager and Hormel Commission Chairperson. Be it further resolved that Mr. Buckley be invited to a future council meeting to receive an official council commendation. Councilor Knight.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Many of us behind this rail and many of us in this community know John Jack Buckley. He's served our community diligently for many, many years. I believe Jack was a school committee member when I was in elementary school. I had the good fortune of growing up a neighbor to him, and he's been a great asset to our community, Mr. President. Last month was his last meeting as the chairperson of the Hormel Commission, and he has stepped down from public service at this point in time, and he is officially retired. So with that being said, Mr. President, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Buckley and thank him for all the work that he's done on behalf of the citizenry here in Medford, and I'd also like to have him come down to a council meeting and receive an official council commendation highlighting and denoting his many years of service that we appreciate here in the city.
Thank you, Jack, and thank you, Councilor Knight. Seconded by Councilor Caviello. On the motion of approval, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Petitions, presentations of similar matters. 16-511, petition by Dr. John Storella, 20 Metcalf Street, Medford, Mass, to address the council about the founding fathers in Medford. Is the petitioner present? Good evening and welcome. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Mr. President. If I may, I would like to set up my teleprompter and proceed. Thank you, Mr. President. I am Dr. John Storella of 20 Metcalf Street in Medford, speaking on the founding fathers in Medford. Recently, Mr. President, some younger residents have asked me about my background, so I want to humbly offer this short resume for the record. I was born in 1924 when Calvin Coolidge was President of the United States. When World War II broke out in December 1941, I was 17 years old and volunteered to serve in the Navy. I was assigned to a small amphibious ship called an LSM, which is a landing ship medium, in the North Atlantic Fleet, and became gunnery and communications officer. When the war in Europe was won in 1945, I was assigned to train my crew for the invasion of Japan. And so was Jake Keating. Many of you may remember him. He is Medford's deceased police chief and city councilor. Fortunately for us, the atom bomb suddenly ended the war, preventing the loss of hundreds of thousands of American and Japanese lives. Now, I returned to school after the war and received a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Massachusetts in Amherst. Then I received a doctor's degree from the Columbia School of Dental and Oral Surgery. And last month, I attended my 65th graduation reunion at Columbia in New York City. In between, I had interned at the Creedmoor Hospital in Queens, New York. I taught clinical pathology at Tufts University and practiced for 44 years in East Boston, serving a needy population. In the 1960s, I contributed to the development of dental implants and was invited to the first international symposium on dental implantology in Paris, France. And now, I have been retired for 21 years and enjoying my retirement. Now, I want to assure all the people in government that my presentation is not personal. It is on philosophy and principle. It is not directed at anybody. I am not here to judge anybody. I consider all of you in government my friends, and I mean to give you my energetic and materialistic support to the best of my ability if you should have the private need. I honestly believe in a prayer that says, "It is in giving that we receive." What do we receive? We receive joy and peace. Now, it was only 240 years ago, back in 1776, that the Founding Fathers signed the Declaration of Independence from the oppressive ruler of England. They pledged their lives, their fortunes, and their sacred honor for liberty. Think of it. How many of us would do that today? Pledge our lives, our fortunes, our sacred honor for the hope of liberty. Then, the Founding Fathers embarked on a war of 7 years against the most powerful nation in the world at that time. It was a war filled with starvation, disease, and sacrifice, which the Patriots barely won with a lot of luck. Abigail Adams, who was born here in Weymouth and was the wife of our second president, John Adams, said, "Posterity, who are to reap the blessings, will scarcely be able to conceive the hardships and sufferings of their ancestors." And it was only 229 years ago that the Founding Fathers set up a government to serve the people, not themselves, but all the people. In order to serve the people, they wrote a constitution which established a government with checks and balances within the government. They accomplished this by having 3 branches of government: an executive, a legislative, and a judicial, with each one able to check excessive power by the other 2. It was the first time in history that a nation of people shaped and formed their own government, and all 13 colonies voted for it. John Adams said, "The happiness of the people is the purpose of government." And since happiness is derived from virtue, that form of government, with virtue as its foundation, is more likely than any other to promote general happiness. The idea was to have the Patriots serve in the government for a short period of time at small compensation, and then to return home to their occupations and live under the same laws they had passed, and give other patriots a chance to serve the people. In other words, they believed in term limitation. After one 4-year term, George Washington, the first president, wished to retire, but the nation wanted him to stay on because there was no replacement of Washington's stature, and he stayed for one more term with some self-doubt, and then retired happily to Mount Vernon. No other president served more than 2 terms until Franklin Roosevelt, who was elected to 4 terms during the Great Depression, which was followed by World War II. And then, seeing the harm done, the nation ratified the 22nd Amendment, setting a limit of 2 terms. Back in 1787, after the Revolutionary War was won, Benjamin Franklin at the Constitutional Convention said, quote, "There are 2 passions which have a powerful influence on the affairs of men. They are ambition and avarice. 1, the love of money, and 2, the love of power. Separately, each of these has great force in prompting men to action. But when united in view of the same object, they have in many minds violent effects. Place before the eyes of such men a post of honor that shall at the same time be a place of profit, and and they will move heaven and earth to obtain it. Close quote. Also, Benjamin Franklin went on to say, though we may set out in the beginning with moderate salaries, we shall find that such will not be of long continuance. Reasons will never be lacking for proposed augmentations, and there will always be a party for giving more to the rulers, that the rulers may be able in return to give more to them. Hence, as all history informs us, there has been in every state and kingdom a constant warfare between the governing and the governed, the one striving to obtain more for its support and the other to pay less. End of quote. Benjamin Franklin was trying to make government unattractive to people motivated primarily by power and money. And his prediction of giving more and more to the rulers has been demonstrated right here in Medford. Salaries for incumbents have increased year after year after year. That was the result of having career politicians, and why Thomas Jefferson, our third president, said that he supported mandatory rotation in office. Now that leads us to the plight of the people of Medford. Abraham Lincoln spoke of government of the people, by the people, for the people. But what government do we have here in Medford? In my opinion, we have government of the mayor, by the city council, for the public employees. That is what our charter of a strong mayor has done to us. In theory, we have government for the people, but in practice, in reality, we have little democracy. In a small city like Medford, it should be easy to include the people, but the people are rarely consulted on major issues. James Madison, our fourth president, said, the accumulation of power in the same hands, even if elected, may justly be pronounced the very definition of tyranny. The political philosophers say that people get the government they deserve. I do not agree with that nonsense. I do agree that the people, by not voting, commit an act of omission. But the ruling elite commit a sin of commission by serving themselves instead of the people. The people may want to make some changes in Medford Charter, but the process is so complicated and takes so many years that the establishment will not allow it. We've seen that recently. The establishment loves the present charter as it is. That is the plight of the people of Medford. No government of the people, by the people, for the people. In other words, there is precious little democracy. In my opinion, the people of Medford are good people. Many of them are altruistic. Many of them will serve at no compensation or benefit to themselves for a short period of time and then leave like the Founding Fathers. We must elect those charitable people to make this a better world, which means to make this a better Medford. Because while we are here, Medford is our world. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. Chair waits motion. On the motion of Council Knight to receive and place on file. Please state your name and address for the record.
Andrew Castanetti, Cushion Street, Medford, Massachusetts. It was great to hear Dr. Starella. He's always so profound, and it ain't easy to follow him. However, on this subject of U.S. government, I'd like to, he reminded me some things that have been bouncing around in my head of late, especially with these elections that are coming up on a national level. basically, I feel that I've been lied to back in elementary school in Somerville and when I finished the kindergarten at the Hancock School. They told me it was a democracy. I don't think so. It's more like a capital C, capitalism. Bernie Sanders, I believe, is right in one area for sure, that the Supreme Court allowed Citizens United to exist as an entity a few years back, and it was by a 5-4 Supreme Court vote, and Mr. Scalia is gone. So now it might be a draw if it came back before the Supreme Court. Citizens United, a lot of people don't know what that means. They think it's a wonderful 2 words put together. But in reality, the way I understand it, it allows that entity to collect unlimited money, funds, different currencies worldwide from you and I, or from China, Russia, Soviet Union. It doesn't matter, England, and big conglomerates in this country, big oil, etc. Rupert Murdoch controls newspapers by the hundreds worldwide. So they collect unlimited funds, unlimited. And furthermore, they do not have to disclose where they received any of these funds. So I'm thinking maybe they are the ones that create these super PACs and give it to hopefully their next political puppet that they want as a leader of the United States of America. Whoever that might be on either side, does not matter, because they want that person to win with all the monies that were collected, illicit and unknown locations, and they don't want the apple cart to be upset in Washington, D.C. So even the Republicans, they don't want Trump, they don't want Cruz, but they're going to allow maybe Mrs. Hillary to win the next 4 years, and then they're willing to give up 4 years in order not to upset their apple cart in Washington, D.C. Now, the Sicilians are right. The fish rots from the head down. It starts in Washington, D.C., it comes to the local governors and to your local yokels in any town and community out of the 351 in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. I guess I care too much about justice. That's my only agenda. I like to change the old adage from the founding fathers and say, no further taxation without proper representation, and let's stop the waste. Hire Trump to negotiate edgerly bubble before we end up with the Superdome in New Orleans. God forbid. Good luck.
On the motion of Council Knight that the paper be received and placed on file, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. 16-512, my omission, my apologies. The Committee of the Whole report from May 18, 2016 on public safety. I read it at the beginning of the meeting and didn't ask for approval. Chair awaits motion. On the motion of approval by Council Knight, seconded by Vice President Kern. All those in favor, all those opposed, motion carries. On the motion of Council Caviello to go into suspension to receive papers in the hands of the clerk. All those in favor, all those opposed, motion carries. Offered by Council Scarpelli. Be it resolved that the DPW director contact the Department of Conservation and Recreation to repair a huge pothole on Route 16 on the walking path across from CKS Furniture Store. That's on the Mystic Valley Parkway, Councilor?
It is. I know. Thank you, Mr. President. I know this is in the privy of the DCR, but I I received information that there was a pothole where a small child can fall right through, and it was open and dangerous. I did try to call my contacts at the DCR and left message, but maybe the city has the DPW director has a better line of communications, but it is on the walking path located at the set of lights across the street from CKS and the courthouse where the McDonald Field sign is located. So if they can contact the DCR in the sake of public safety and so someone doesn't lose a child, we appreciate it. Thank you.
On the motion for approval by Council Scarpelli, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Offered by Vice President Lovett Curran, be resolved that the Alden Chambers video system be upgraded / fixed due to connection problems. Madam Vice President.
Thank you, President Del Russo. I don't know, I'm sure we all have received complaints when people are watching our meetings and the school committee meetings. They're fading out, especially at between 8 and 8:30. A lot of crackling. You can barely hear the sound. So just ask the administration if we can get some updates to correct the problem. I would hope that more meetings are going to be publicized in the chambers. We asked for more meetings on video. So, and these are important meetings. School committee meetings are important, and when you can barely hear a good portion of them, it's obviously not a good thing. So if we could get that fixed, that would
On
be
the motion of Vice
appreciated.
President Longo Curran, Council Caraviallo.
Thank you, Mr. President. On Council Longo's motion there, I happened to meet the gentleman from Comcast who fixed it the last time it broke, and what he told me was the whole thing needs to be. He says it's archaic in the world of today, and he explained to me that it wasn't that much of a cost to bring that up to 2016 speed. So. I don't think it was a ridiculous amount of money, but I say he kind of laughed that he came in to fix something that was that archaic, Mr. President. So.
On the motion for approval.
Can we ask the administration to get an estimate on what it would cost to
As
put in a new
amended
system?
by Vice President Longo Curran for an estimate to repair the system.
Yeah.
Council Scarpelli.
If we can we amend that to maybe find that that employee that has done it already, and then have him report, see if this Comcast can report back to us.
On that motion, all those in favor? All those opposed? Motion carries. Offered by Council Marks. Two condolences here, so I'll read them together, Councilor. Be it resolved that a moment of silence be held for longtime Medford resident Romulo Mac Mashi on his recent passing, and also be it resolved that a moment of silence be held for longtime Medford resident Dorothy Selfridge on her recent passing. So,
Thank you, Mr. President. Mac Maskey was a fixture of this community for a number of years. He was a great family man, and he is going to sorely be missed. And Dorothy Selfridge was very active in the community also, and she lived on Warren Street and had a number of sons, and they were just a great family, and again, she will be sorely missed.
please stand for a moment of silence. Records of the meeting of May 17th, 2016 are passed to Council Caraviallo. Mr. Councilor, how do you find those records?
Mr. President, I have reviewed the records and they appear to be in order. Mr. President, while I have the floor, if I can remind everybody, tomorrow is the Veterans Lunch here at City, right in this room at City Hall. Ms. Martin will be here, and I will be here, and I hope the President will be here. And again, it is a lunch for free for all the veterans of Medford. Again, it's very nicely attended, and again, I hope
Sponsored by the
Medford Chamber of Commerce.
Great organization, I must say.
Great organization.
Very
and
good.
I say, Ms. Martin, Jean has been very helpful. She'll be here tomorrow helping out, as she always is.
Very good. So on the motion for approval of those minutes, all those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Meeting adjourned.